August Rain by Francisco Álvarez. Chapter 2. At 3 in the afternoon on the dot, the chickpea stew dancing a shotter in his stomach, Cardinal Juan Soldevilla y Romero, Archbishop of Zaragoza, stepped out into the porticoed courtyard of the Archbishop's palace and looked up to the heavens as if trying to gauge the temperature in the Aragonese capital with his eyes alone. He adjusted his cape and rochet with a look of annoyance, then turned to his secretary, who stood beside him. Tell Sister Mercedes she's to start making something lighter for lunch. It's June already. These heavy stews do me no good at all in this weather. I'll talk to her later on, Your Eminence. Honestly, Luis, there's no need for such formality when it's just the two of us. I must have told you 1,000 times. Whatever you say, Uncle. The elderly cardinal rested a hand on his secretary's forearm, the secretary who also happened to be his nephew, and using him as a crutch, began his slow, laboured walk to the car. When they arrived, they found the rear door open and the cardinal's chauffeur, a middle-aged man with his peaked cap tucked under his arm, standing next to it waiting for them. Good afternoon, Your Eminence, he said. Please, make yourself comfortable. By the grace of God, Santiago, replied the cardinal, as per usual. The chauffeur waited for the two clergymen to get into the car, a shiny new 1921 Hispano Suiza La Baudette, black as a cassock. After a quick glance inside to make sure they were ready, he gently closed the door, put his peaked cap firmly on his head, hurried round to the driver's seat and started up the engine, which began to growl softly. Forgive my obstinacy, Uncle, said the Cardinal's nephew, but the irrigation associations have asked to see you again. I tried to be as vague with them as I could, but they're determined to speak to you one way or another. Lord, give me strength. What do they want now? They want you to intercede on their behalf. You know how it works. He who's without a godfather shall not be baptized. Don't they know that when it comes to Aragonese politics, I'm worth less than a 3 of clubs these days? What is it they think I can do for them exactly? His nephew frowned and gave a resigned shrug. Well, tell them they can come and see me one day next week, but don't give them more than half an hour, and make sure it's mid-morning. I know what they're like. The chauffeur carefully manoeuvred the car out of the garage and set off for the neighbourhood of Delicias. It was a grey, late spring afternoon, and as was customary for that time of day at that time of year, Zaragoza was in the midst of a siesta, so there was barely a carriage, car or pedestrian to be found on the city streets. In the back of the car, separated by a wooden lattice, the two men could almost have been in confessional. Taking advantage of the privacy, they spent the journey sharing their respective thoughts, theories and opinions on the country's present political instability. It was a few minutes before 3:30 when the vehicle reached its destination, the Terminio estate, just at the edge of the Casablanca neighbourhood. It came to a stop in front of the intricate wrought iron gates. This time and place was sacrosanct to the cardinal. From Monday to Friday, he never missed his appointment with the asylum school of the Sisters of the Order of San Vicente de Paul, the charitable institution he'd founded many years earlier. Of course, his visits, regular as clockwork, only served to fuel the speculation among certain strata of Zaragoza society about a possible carnal relationship between the cardinal and one of the nuns that ran the institution. Wagging tongues, however, were of little concern to him. By virtue of his age and position, the cardinal was well beyond the reach of worldly gossip, and in such matters he preferred to fall back on the old adage that it's better to be an open sinner than a false saint. Santiago, the chauffeur, gently tapped the horn, doing his best to cause as little disturbance as possible during those hours of quiet digestion. Clasping the steering wheel like a captain at the helm of a ship, he waited for one of the novices to come and unlock the gates. It would be a matter of a minute or two at most, but there are times in life when a minute or two can matter very much. The two gunmen, who had been keeping watch from across the street for more than half an hour, were quick to act. The more assured of the two, a young man of around 20 years old, tall and thin, wearing a light blue suit, a trench coat and a beret, scrutinised the vehicle and its occupants. A car with the Zaragoza licence plate Z135, a chauffeur in uniform, and 2 passengers in religious vestments of differing rank. They fit the bill. He waved his left hand to signal to his accomplice that it was time. With his right, he took hold of the Alcar semi-automatic 7-shot pistol hidden under his trench coat. The two men approached the car obliquely from behind, one from either side. When they were about 5 paces from the target, they stopped, drew their weapons in perfect unison and, hands steady, took aim and fired. The bullets rained down on the windows, fenders, headlights, and chassis of the shiny new 1921 Labordette, black as a hearse, which shook like St. Vitus' dance beneath the shower of lead. Once they'd emptied their chambers, the two gunmen continued towards the car, its engine still running. Looking inside, they saw that one of the men was dead, while the other two were merely injured and atrophied with terror. The cardinal's body was slumped back, his face contorted, eyes and mouth open wide like a trout. Blood was streaming down his chest. The smaller of the two gunmen, in a black suit and cap, opened the front door on the passenger side and thrust the dark barrel of his gun into the car, pointing it first at the chauffeur, then the cardinal's nephew. The chauffeur, blood all over his neck, immediately covered his face, hoping at least to avoid bearing witness to his own death, while the cardinal's nephew whispered a quick Hail Mary and crossed himself with the one arm he could still move. Tell the authorities this is a reprisal for the death of the anarcho-syndicalist Salvador Segui and Francesc Comas, murdered in Barcelona by scab thugs with the backing of the cardinal and his associates, said the man in the trench coat. With that, the two gunmen ran off down the street, tossing their weapons into the thick, dry bushes at the first bend in the road. It's done, said one, between heaving breaths. One less bastard in the land of the living, replied the other, without breaking stride.